Hey everybody, this is Dr. Glenn and welcome to Facebook Live, Lunch with Dr. Glenn on Tuesdays at 12:30. Today we're going to talk about exercise and the brain. For the last 50 years or so, when we think about exercise, we tend to think about it in terms of the heart. Because supposedly long-term aerobic exercise, getting on the treadmill or the rower or the bike or something like that, they're supposed to be good for the heart, and they are. But actually, exercise is also really, really important for your brain. And one of the things that exercise does for your brain that it doesn't do for any other part of your body is exercise causes your body to make this stuff called BDNF. And I've got it written out here for you so you can see it. BDNF, and that stands for brain derived neurotrophic factor. And it's actually spelled correctly, neurotrophic. And neurotrophic, anytime you see a word that's got trophic on the end of it, it has to do with like a hormone or a chemical type creation. So what is this brain-derived neurotrophic factor stuff? Well, it is a chemical and it acts like fertilizer in your brain. Yeah, it actually helps you to grow new brain cells. And, the process of growing new brain cells is a real fancy word called neurogenesis. Well, we all know what Genesis is, like in the book of Genesis, it's when everything was created. So neurogenesis is when you create new neuro stuff or new neurons and brain cells. So brain-derived neurotrophic factor helps you to create new brain cells. And I know, growing up, we were taught that you don't grow new brain cells, and, every day you lose so many bazillions of cells. And I think I said this once before, I think that's when our parents were trying to tell us that we weren't supposed to be drinking beer on Friday night or something like that. But brain-derived neurotrophic factor helps you to grow new brain cells, and it also helps you to do something else called neuroplasticity. And that's when you create more and more good, strong connections between your cells. They talk to each other better. There's a whole concept that has become very a big deal in the research over the last maybe 30 years. And that's called neuroplasticity. And what that means is that your brain can learn to do new stuff. So BDNF is a growth factor which allows for the repair of nerves, especially in a part of your brain called the hippocampus. Now, your hippocampus is where you take memory and convert it into longer term memory. So in the very beginning of memory, right here in the front part of your brain, that's your frontal cortex or your prefrontal cortex. When working memory is if somebody walks up and says, "Hi, my name's Bob," and you go, "Oh, hi, Bob." Well, that's an example of working memory. In other words, you just heard something and it's right there in your immediate recall. You look at a license plate, you write the number down, you see a billboard and go, "Oh, I want to call, Joe Schmo's carpet place and find out about what they can do." That's working memory. When you go to sleep, your body takes working memory and converts it into longer term memory, and part of that happens in this part of your brain called your hippocampus. And actually, that's a part of your brain that has some stem cells, which means that for your whole life, you can grow new hippocampus. I know when I was in school, we were taught you can't grow new brain. Well, that's not true. There are parts of your brain that has stem cells in it, and as long as you've got those stem cells, you can grow new brain. So exercise is one of the main ways that you can create this BDNF neurotrophic factor stuff. There's several other things that exercise does for you, and that is it decreases inflammation, which is real important. When you go back and look at the research, Dr. Bredesen and other people that have done on what causes cognitive decline of all types, That's everything from Parkinson's disease to full-on Alzheimer's. What we know is that the two biggest categories of things are inflammation and blood sugar regulation problems, and exercise helps to reduce inflammation. Now, if you over-exercise, you can actually increase your inflammation, but that's primarily in your extremities and joints and stuff. Like, if you just do, too much time on the treadmill or something, you can get some inflammation in your knee. So you don't want to overwork out. But exercise also does a couple of other things for you. It improves what's called autophagy. Autophagy is kind of a fancy word, but it means your body goes in and it cleans up the waste and the debris from metabolism. And also, cells have a life. They only live for so long. For example, a red blood cell lives for about 90 to 120 days. And when the cell dies, then the garbage guys come along and they clean up the waste there, and that's called autophagy. And the other thing that exercise does for you that's really, really good is it improves something called mitochondrial function. Mitochondria are like little energy factories inside your cells. So if your cell was a car, your mitochondria is like the motor in your car, except you got lots of them in your cells. So exercise helps you to create more mitochondria. Now, let me get another little graphic I've got for you here. Let's see. Let me get this one up here. So how are we going to increase our brain-derived neurotrophic factor? Well, one of the big things you can do is moderate to intense exercise. And I'm going to talk about exercise a little bit more in a bit. Some other things you can do is you can eat butyrate producing foods. Now, what is a butyrate producing food? Well, butyrate is something called a fatty acid, and you have several fatty acids, and butyrate is one of them. It's called a short chain fatty acid, and they're very, very important for reducing inflammation and things like that, but they also increase your brain-derived neurotrophic factor. So what are butyrate producing foods? Well, you can Google it and look them up, but I'll give you some here. Butter is, butter's not bad for you, by the way. Berries, avocados. Avocados are so good in lots of ways. You get a lot of good fat from them and stuff like that. Asparagus, leeks. We don't cook a lot with leeks, but they're a great thing to use in cooking, like at a time when you would use like onion or something like that. Yams are great. Nuts, especially almonds and pistachios. Flaxseed, dandelion greens. Nowadays, when I was a kid, there was like iceberg lettuce, and that was like all there was. But now they got all kinds of these cool greens and stuff. But dandelion greens are high in butyrate. So are onions and even seaweed. And that sounds kind of weird, but I've actually eaten seaweed before, and sometimes it's really good. I think maybe it depends on how it's prepared. The other thing that will help to drive the production of BDNF are high fiber foods. So what are high fiber foods? Well, things like edamame, green beans, broccoli, artichokes. By the way, artichokes, here's a little for you foodie, chefy people out there. There are some really cool ways that you can fix artichokes. So Google that thing and see what you find, and try doing the artichoke thing. I like doing those in the spring. Brussels sprouts, kale, spinach. These are all high fiber foods. Your berries again, avocados and nuts and berries, they come in both of those categories. The great thing about high fiber foods is that also helps to be a source of the next one, prebiotics. Prebiotics, you don't just have to drink like weird tasting kimchi and stuff like that. A lot of these foods that grow close to the ground, like broccoli and stuff like that, these are high in bacteria, which become probiotics, and prebiotics, but also fermented foods. You've probably heard all this stuff before, but fermented foods are very high in prebiotics. Lion's mane. Now, what in the world is lion's mane? Well, lion's mane is this really cool looking kind of a mushroom thingy that actually looks like the mane of a lion. And it's super good stuff, especially for inflammation. It's really good stuff for your brain. We use it here in the office for a lot of our patients. Milk thistle. Milk thistle is a great herb. Curcumin. Now you've probably heard of curcumin and turmeric. The thing is just cooking with it is not really enough. If you're going to use curcumin, you need to take it as a supplement. We've got a great one that we like to use here in the office. Green coffee bean extract is good for this, and so is anything that increases your production of serotonin. Now, the great thing about serotonin is that as you work on making your gut better, you will increase your serotonin production. You know, when I was in school, back in the early 80s, we were taught that serotonin, now that's a neurotransmitter. That'd be a good, maybe we'll do a talk on neurotransmitters. But neurotransmitters are things that help the way your brain functions. When I was in school, we were taught that neurotransmitters are all made in your brain. Well, that's not true. As a matter of fact, about 90+% of your serotonin is made in your gut. You see, this stuff all ends up, being related to each other. If your gut's in good shape, you're making more neurotransmitters, you feel better, you're going better, and all this stuff, and you keep your blood sugar under control and all that kind of stuff. But so let's come back now and let's talk a little bit about exercise. So let me get rid of this guy right here and let's bring up some exercise. So what kind of exercises are good for the production of brain-derived neurotrophic factor, especially? And what all does exercise do that's really good for you? Well, exercise, it helps to maintain a healthy BMI. That has to do with your fat to height and weight ratio. The other thing that exercise does is it promotes a better insulin sensitivity. You'll see a lot of times commercials nowadays, and they're talking about people who just can't lose weight. Well, what we find very often is if you have stubborn weight, and that's kind of what happens to most people, if you're having a weight issue and it just won't come off, there's a really good chance that you've developed something called insulin resistance. And what that means is that it doesn't matter what you do. You can get on the treadmill, you can cut your calories, you can do all this stuff, and the weight just won't move. Well, exercise will help to improve your insulin sensitivity. It'll also help you to regulate your blood sugar better. Exercise helps to reduce inflammation as long as you're not over-exercising. Now, excessive exercising can actually increase inflammation. Exercise will help you to decrease stress and anxiety because as you exercise, your adrenal glands will calm down some, and you will produce some stuff called what do they call it? The chemical that helps you to calm down. When runners have a runner's high, those are endorphins and enkephalins. When you exercise, your body creates endorphins and enkephalins, and they help to calm you down and they make you feel better. And whenever you feel better, your stress level comes down. Exercise will also improve your blood pressure. Now, how does it do that? A lot of people have a real skewed understanding, my colleagues included, about what drives up blood pressure. Everybody thinks eating too much salt, or something like that raises your blood pressure. No, it doesn't. It just doesn't. If your kidneys work like they're supposed to, they will regulate the amount of salt level in your blood. Here's what causes blood pressure to go up. Your blood pressure is under the control of your adrenal glands. All right? What do adrenal glands do? Well, adrenal glands are your fight or flight response mechanism. So when you get stressed, now stress could be the Vikings are landing and they're coming to rampage and rape and pillage and tear up your village and steal all your stuff. That's stress, all right? But being stuck in traffic, emotional relationship things, anything that causes you stress, whether it's physical, lions and tigers and bears, or whether it's emotional stress, financial stress, All of these stressors cause your adrenal glands to come to your aid. Your adrenal glands, their job, their responsibility is to come save you from the stressful situation. And the way they do that is they raise your blood pressure. Well, if you're going to have to fight off the Vikings or run away from a lion or something like that, do you want your blood pressure to go up or down? Well, you want it to go up. Of course you do, because you've either got to swing the axe and defend yourself against the Vikings, or you have to run away faster than the lion can run. By the way, I saw something today. A friend of mine sent this to me, and it was a do not trespass sign on a field in Texas. And the guy said, do not enter this field unless you can cross it in 9 seconds or less, because the bull can do it in 10. Now that would be a stress event. You'd want to pump a whole lot of blood into your legs so you could run fast. That causes you to raise your blood pressure. So the number one thing that causes an elevated blood pressure is stress response. Exercising reduces the risk of heart disease and stroke. Why? Because it lowers your stress level. Exercise will also improve your mood and sleep. Now, I told you we're going to talk a little bit about exercise in particular, and this is something that I'm going to have to say with a little bit of sort of a disclaimer, and that is, if you're going to do this, then I have to ask you to make sure that you get somebody who's qualified, whether it is your primary care doctor or a properly trained coach or something like that. I don't want you exercising until you know that you can do it. But the best way to increase this brain-derived neurotrophic factor stuff that helps you to grow new brain tissue and everything like that is by doing something called high-intensity interval training, HIIT training. High-intensity interval training is when you raise your heart rate up to its anaerobic aerobic threshold and you hold it there for a period of time. Now, simple rule of thumb for where this is if you take 220 and subtract your age in years, all right, from it, and you come up with a number, take 80% of that number. So your age minus 220 minus your age times 0.8. That will give you theoretically what is your aerobic anaerobic threshold. If you spend 3 to 5 minutes in your just over that threshold, you will make as much brain-derived neurotrophic factor that as you can make that day. So whether you go for a walk or you like to do floor exercises or get on the bike or whatever it is that you like to do, your goal is to spend 3 to 5 minutes of your exercise time with your heart rate right up at or right above that level. It doesn't have to be all at the same time. So you could do little intervals. So let's say you like to go out for a nice walk every day. I do. I like to go out for a nice walk, take my little corgi, Max. And Max has got a lot of personality, by the way. But I like to take little Max out for a walk. And it's great to just push that pace. Push that pace a little bit. Get yourself right up at that heart rate. And there's sort of a little rule of thumb that you can use. It's sort of the conversation rule. And if you were to be walking with somebody, if you were at your anaerobic threshold, it would be all you could do to hold a conversation. You'd just be right at that point where you're just working a little too much to really hold a conversation. You can use that as a rule of thumb, or if you've got one of these smart watches or Fitbits or things like that, that can tell you what your heart rate is. I have just a regular old watch with a second hand, and what I do is I count my pulse for 6 seconds and put a 0 on it. That tells me exactly what my heart rate is, or close enough for that rule. So what you want to do is you want to exercise 3 to 5 minutes right there at or just above your anaerobic threshold, and that will help you to make all of this BDNF that you can in that day. So I hope this has been real beneficial for you. Exercise is important. It does a lot of things. But the thing is with HIIT exercise, the high intensity interval training, you don't have to spend the rest of your life on a treadmill. You don't have to buy special clothes and join a gym and do all this stuff unless you like to. And if you want to, do it. And that's great for accountability, but you can just go for a walk and, go real hard for a block, then take a breather, then go hard for a block and push your pace a little bit. You can do it. It's really, really simple. So I thank you for being here with me today. I'm Dr. Glenn. I'm the clinical director and founder of the Carroll Institute, where our primary focus is on saving people's brains. If you'd like to find out more about what we do, then you see the phone number there, or you can look us up online. We offer something called a free discovery phone call, where you can get on the phone with one of our certified brain health coaches, and you can talk about what's going on with you, ask some questions, and find out if we're a good place for you. So thank you for being with me today on Facebook Live with Dr. Glenn, Lunch with Dr. Glenn on Tuesdays, and we'll be back next Tuesday. We'll see you then. Have a great day. Bye.